Um, you know, what I didn't notice is that with the large influx of games finally including rollback, that a lot of people wouldn't actually understand what it is or how it works. I thought there was more than enough talks about it, enough people, enough really big influencers and content creators, players, commentators, etc., talking about the benefits of it and the way it works. So there's like this little small 4-minute informational video about Rollback Netcode that we can watch together on stream, and then I can chat about it and some of the misconceptions of Rollback Netcode, right? Because there's like some real big misconceptions. There's some real big problems that anytime Rollback is implemented in the game, they get talked about. They get discussed, right? And generally there's one that's named right after the type of netcode it is that people use as some sort of like a way to describe an inherent interaction that feels unfair or broken or bad in comparison to something that would happen in deliberative netcode. But we'll get to that. So let's watch this little video. I think I can turn off this sound. I'm gonna turn off this music. Let me turn off this music, and I think we go here, the live screen. And there's a little 4-minute video from Code Mystics explains rollback netcode, input delay versus rollback. Huh? Yeah, we're going to talk about rollback because some people apparently still don't actually understand what rollback is, how it works, and why it exists. The big takeaway is generally it's just better than delay-based netcode, right? Delay-based netcode is you press the button, there's a certain amount of millisecond ping between you and your opponent, so that button has to be delayed so it gets to your opponent at the same time as you. Rollback tries to interpret that button as early as possible, which means it's guessing, technically, with some amount of inherent delay built on top, right? So that your opponent may see it a couple frames after you, hopefully not too far in the past, but it feels smoother. It feels closer to traditional offline play. So let's watch this little video. In online games, it can take time for information from one machine to reach another. True. Yeah. Two players can push their buttons at the same time, and they won't know the information until the other player reaches the information. Yeah, true. Because of potential, the amount of time it takes for the information to reach through the internet. Input delay synchronizes by waiting for the other player's action, then executes the buttons together. So you see a delay between a button press and action, which means that inherently it makes the game feel more slow or sluggish. Yeah, it makes the game feel slow or sluggish in comparison to offline. Not always. Sometimes there are some connections that feel great, that feel almost perfect. Rollback, on the other hand, your fighter acts immediately before you know what the other player did. Did you see that? Did you guys notice that? When it reaches your opponent, the game synchronizes by jumping the other player ahead. Yo, got you tabbed up, my boy. Have a good stream. Same to you, Leek. Look, Liko, I still got you tabbed up. You're right under my OBS. I got you, dog. So you may see teleporting to where your opponent should have been by now, right? So you see the later frames of the kick come out because on their screen they already pressed it before you did your jab. Blended, which is the most common. You can also blend rollback netcode and input delay. This is the most common one. I'm telling you guys now that this is the most common one because even if you look at a game like Street Fighter 6, where everyone's like, yo, this game actually has really amazing netcode, some of the best in the business when it comes to like modern fighting games, brand new fighting games, there's a little counter up at the top, and it tells you how much input delay exists and how much rollback exists, right? It'll say, oh, there's 4 frames of rollback and 1 frame of delay, or there's 3 frames of rollback and 1 frame of delay, or it'll say there's 7 frames of rollback with 2 or 3 frames of delay, right? And what that is that's blending it together so that because there's more delay, that delay bakes in, they bake in that delay to the online proponent so that even though there's a little bit more delay than there would be offline, that delay helps kind of blend in, kind of mix in some of the rollback without the opponents having to really feel too much of a difference, right? I think anything over 3 frames starts to feel really noticeable. 3 frames and under, you're probably okay, right? Not the worst thing in the world, but anything above that, you really start to feel a huge difference in the way the game feels offline compared to online. You can set a small delay before your action takes effect. Yes, correct. Some games let you set your delay. Some games, it's a static amount of delay set by the game. Other games, it's variable delay on top of the rollback. That we'll talk about here in a little bit because I think that's a terrible system. Correct. Right? And I think people are like, well, let me set my delay, right? Let me set my delay so that if I know what kind of connections I'm expecting or what kind of players I'm generally going to fight against, let me set my delay. So if I'm playing at someone, I don't know, a town over, a state over, I'll set my delay to 1, right? Or a country over if you're in Europe, because countries are about as small as states in the United States. Anyways, you'd set your delay to 1 or 2, right? Okay, I'm choosing to play someone across the pond, right? Now I'm in East Coast and I'm trying to play someone in Europe. Let me set my delay to 3 or 4, right? West Coast to Japan. Oh, let me set my delay to, 3 or 4, maybe even 5, right? Center of the United States. Let me set my delay to 3, and I can fight either sides of the United States, whether it be East Coast or West Coast, with minimal teleporting, right? And I think the issue with a lot of games wanting to pick the delay for you is that they don't give the player enough agency and thought. They're just like, okay, well, the players are dumb and they're going to put 0 and the game's going to teleport a lot and it's going to look bad and they're going to stop playing the game. You have to give players more credit than that. They like to try to optimize their games to run at 60 FPS as often as possible. In shooting games, we try to get over 120, over 144. Most people don't choose graphics over performance, right? And those teleporting, it looks like bad graphics to the most casual of audience. They're like, ooh, this teleporting's bad. Hey, is there something I can do about that? You hit the YouTube, you hit the Google, boom, it tells you how to fix it. You add some frames of delay, and then you find out what delay is and delay-based netcode and rollback netcode, and here you are watching my YouTube video. That's how that ends up. This is what most forms of rollback netcode are that we currently have. Are blended. CodeMystics netcode, you have choose the method that works for you. Unfortunately, this part is irrelevant because, the games that we're going to refer to, you don't get to set your netcode. Your delay. It gets set for you. What we were going to talk about is Tekken 8 and its rollback solution, as it says it has. We'll just take it at face value until we figure out if it has it or not. And Street Fighter 6's rollback and its rollback values. Okay, so let's first talk about these games before we talk about the 3 major points of rollback. Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8, as far as I can tell and as far as I know, have variable input delay on top of a rollback netcode solution. What variable delay does is it adds more delay depending on the amount of travel time for the frames, the ping, right? The milliseconds, as it were, right? It's not always the worst thing in the world, but generally it makes for a less consistent experience to have variable delay on top of your rollback netcode solution. That's what 2 of the most prominent fighters are using currently. I believe even Mortal Kombat is using a variable delay with rollback. Right? Neither of these things are static. There's no static set number for the delay. So say you get a giant spike, even for a couple of frames, and it shoots up to 300, 400 ms. It will now set that rollback value. It will now set that delay value, at least in Street Fighter 6, for the rest of the round, maybe even the rest of the match, if I'm not mistaken, to a really high delay. A 3-frame, 4-frame, 5-frame delay. And it won't put it back. And even if it did, that would mean that you have to now get used to 5-frame delay for a couple seconds, then back down to 1 for a couple more seconds. Letting players have the agency, having the choice to choose their input delay on top of the rollback is probably the best solution. That's what CodeMystics does here, right? That's what they get into right here. Boom. And the same thing for whatever rollback solution happens to exist in Tekken 8, if it truly exists, right? I want to wait until the game is actually out, get my hands on it, play online, find out if it really feels like rollback or not, right? But this person is setting their 4-frame delay for 130 ms connection, right? You could probably stand to do 2 or 3 frames. You probably don't need to do 4, but you're allowed to set it, which means you have more player agency. And that delay that you're setting is only on your end. But unfortunately, that's generally not how most rollback solutions work, right? So I wrote down some points. I wrote down some notes. I usually don't do that. But the reason why is because a lot of times I kind of ramble, I kind of rant, and I think that this is the kind of talk where I don't want to do that. Not too hard, right? So let me turn back on the tunes. We'll get into that part of the video. So, the truths, some of them are ugly, unfortunately, about rollback netcode, or the rollback netcode solutions that we currently use in fighting games, is that number one, first and foremost, and this is an ugly truth because some developers will lie to you and tell you it's not true. If a game can be built and function around delay-based netcode, rollback could have instead been implemented. Because almost every version, this part's not written, almost every version of rollback that exists in modern fighting games is built off of a delay-based netcode solution. And you can see that because these games have a rollback value and a delay-based value. You can check this for yourself. You don't have to believe me at all. Go play Street Fighter 6 right now and watch your delay move and watch your rollback frames move. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll stay at 1 because you're playing against your best friend who lives 2 houses down that you've known your entire life. Go play someone from Asia. Go play someone on Wi-Fi in the United States further away from you, maybe. In your own country, in your own region. You're going to say you're in the, wherever you are in the world. Play someone in your own region further away from you, little on Wi-Fi, and maybe you'll see these lag spikes and you'll notice that the delay frames change and the rollback value changes. So it is delay-based netcode with rollback added on top to kind of mask some of the ugliness and the slowdowns that come with input-based delay, right? But then adding a little bit of delay to cover up the teleports. It's a very nuanced system, and I think that generally, point number 2, generally, while it can be more visually jarring and look worse for like a spectator, for like even you, than regular delay-based netcode, it generally is more consistent and creates more playable matchups. A bad connection will always be a bad connection, right? That bad connection that you played in on 4 frames of delay and, 280 ms with 3 frames of rollback, 4 frames of rollback, could have instead been an 18-frame delay match in something like Dragon Ball FighterZ, a 14-frame match in something like Dragon Ball FighterZ. I'm not shitting you. I've had matches this laggy in Dragon Ball FighterZ, this laggy in Soul Calibur 6. They do exist, right? A bad connection is a bad connection, regardless of whose fault it's on, right? You, the opponent, the fucking servers, my dog ate my Ethernet cable, whatever. You can't completely erase and eradicate bad connections in the current state of, internet hardware and internet infrastructure we have now. It's just not going to happen. But what you can do is you can try to mitigate it as much as possible, and I think rollback netcode does a way better job of that than input-based. Delay-based netcode does. Input, delay-based netcode does. So let's just say input. Let's just say delay-based. It's probably simpler than saying input, delay-based. Anyways. And the last thing, and this one comes up a lot, right? I think that people refer to rollback as like a demon. They're like, oh, you got rollback, right? They're like, oh no, dude, I got rollback. On my screen, he got hit by that, but on his, he blocked it. Dude, I got fucking rollback. I got robbed. So the last point is, rollback is not robbing you. If a hit was rolled back, the opponent jumped it, blocked it, or evaded it in some way, it never happened. While, like I said, we can go back to point 2. It is visually jarring. It's a little harder to hit confirm sometimes, but when you get that hit confirm, your combo, your routing, and your timing will almost always be more consistent, right? So you wouldn't have got the hit because it would have been too laggy. Let's be real here. Let's think about that. But instead, in rollback, what you see is that you hit him and it rolled back and you didn't hit him because of the algorithm, the input reader, the input interpreter, assuming because he was holding forward for 4 frames, he was going to continue to hold forward on the 5th frame, and that you would hit him crossover. But you didn't. He blocked it on that last frame. But your crossover combo didn't hit. There are edge cases where you go for like something like a cross up into jab into level 3 immediate, or you go into like low into level 3 with nothing in between to hit confirm, or overhead into level 3 with nothing in between to confirm, and that can really ruin your day and ruin your experience in some of these games, right? Something like a Guilty Gear Strive with like really fast unreactable offense from time to time, something like Street Fighter that has really, really solid long-reaching loads that you can use to confirm into Drive Rush, spending and wasting resources if it was a block and you didn't see it, or level 3, or even OD moves, right? So you can sometimes lose resources in these situations and it feels really bad, but I think it's worth the risk of having more consistent matches across the board. You didn't get rolled back. I mean, I guess rollback did get you, right? But that means that interaction never happened. You did not win that exchange, or lose that exchange for that matter, right? Sometimes your opponent thinks they got the hit, and they didn't. And you're like, ooh, nice, I got away, I slipped away, lovely, right? Because they did something where they assumed they got a hit, and instead they got a rollback. Now, unfortunately, it's just one of the ugly truths about rollback netcode. It's not something that inherently right now we can avoid with how infrastructure works and how online netcode works, right? Even in something like a Call of Duty, you'll see ghosting on shots, and you're like, why is there ghosting on my shots? You didn't actually hit them. Those hit markers, you shooting at someone and them not getting hit, no hit markers coming out, means they were actually somewhere else. They were slightly outside of the range of that shot, slightly to the left or right, and it never happened. It's not real. You made it up. It's a myth. So those are some of the things that people either think about rollback netcode or don't know about rollback netcode that I just kind of wanted to touch on. Right? I think overall it's a better netcode solution, and we should continue to implement it in games. As the technology gets better, the netcode will get better, which is good, right? So for what we have now, we have pretty serviceable forms of rollback netcode with delay built under it, or vice versa. They could be better. We could have stronger implementations, or we could have more freeform, more player agency built implementations, but I like where we're at. And I'm happy that it's finally happening, that rollback is becoming the standard. Hopefully the standard. We don't know about Tekken 8 yet. We're still just guessing. We're still hoping. Anyways, comment down below if you liked the video, if it was informative in any way, if there were some things in there I discussed and talked about and showed you from this Code Mystics video that you didn't know about or didn't think about. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, get me ever closer to 500 subscribers. If I'm at 500, just keep going. Just get me another subscriber. Continue to watch my content, watch my videos. That'd be sick. I really appreciate it. Watch another video. Share this video with a friend. That'd be so cool. I'm doing the call to action that most YouTubers do. Isn't that neat? I think I've done it every video now. Anyways, this is Beneath Thuggish talking about rollback netcode and some of the misconceptions about rollback netcode. Signing out and saying peace.